mean, performance isn't an end in and of itself. It's a research vehicle, and that's very important, because you are analysing constantly, and you're sort of examining and you're exploring material, and it unlocks other things in it. So if I'm researching, as I often do, identity, well, performance is the perfect space to explore notions of self and other, you know, whether it's character and self, or whether it's audience and performer, or what. It's a perfect sort of place to do that. So in terms of the book, I realised through this process with Shelley that it's unlocking things that I just hadn't seen when I read it. For example, there are certain repetitive motifs that tell you something about Saint-Exupéry. He's got a real thing about watches and clocks and time. They come up in the text, and I hadn't picked up on that when I first read it, but they come up in the text quite often.
Yeah, and
Villagers.
Yeah, I think for me as well, because theatre is experiential, whether you're sitting as a member of an audience or whether you're participating. And I think what it's done is to allow a text which at times is quite dense. I think there's translation issues there, that as a reader you kind of navigate in this world of the pilot, but also when he goes into particular memories, etc. And I think philosophically that can be quite difficult as a reader to get to grips with. And what the process has done is has made that kind of a lived experience. So whilst watching, I thought, so that's why he's talking about the village at that point. I understand now the next section, because I can see it and I can understand it.
I think in the whole book, he's trying to work out what it is he should die for. You know, and it's a really interesting question in this world. You know, what is it I'm dying for? And that really, really interested me, having, you know, my grandfather sort of died in the war, but also because of research into human flight. And I'd had a couple of sort of, you know, those moments where a little light goes on in your research, particularly in my PhD. And I found this epiphany in the book, which isn't obvious actually. You sort of have to put a number of things that he said and throughout the book together, and you suddenly realise what's going on when he the epiphany is very simple. It's that he believes that it's not for the individual, that actually it's for mankind. He believes that in times of abject defeat or suffering, that what people actually do is pick each other off the ground. And I think even, you know, events like 9/11, that's what we see happening. And it sort of restores your faith in the idea of an instinctive goodness in humanity, which is instinctive, and that's why it's important, because it's not ideological. You know, the idea that we're instinctively good, that there is an instinctive morality, I think is really, you know, that's really hopeful. And that's what I think Exupéry sort of suddenly realises in the book. This is like a moment when he says, oh my goodness, you know, I suddenly know what it is I'm fighting for. It's not for the person that's pulled out from under the rubble, it's for the people pulling him out. You know, and you think, wow, that's really, you know, it's a great idea.
Yeah, I think just to kind of add on to that, just go to this notion that it's experiential, it's something that you feel and see. So understanding's not simply cognitive understanding, but it's embodied understanding. It's something that you'll live through, and hopefully the audience will reach that understanding through their experience of the work, which is felt and lived through. It's a different kind of understanding, but I think that's what theatre does. It allows us to experience the world in a lived sense, and not simply through kind of observation.
He sort of shows futility and defeat, and then he sort of shows a restoration of hope and, you know, something positive, which I think is, you know, what for me is hopefully what the piece aims at. You know, that's probably the super objective of the piece in a way.